Have you ever wondered why some people just seem to, effortlessly turn their big ideas into incredible success, while others, maybe people with immense talent, they just seem to spin their wheels? What if there was like a timeless philosophy, a proven set of principles that could actually unlock that potential for almost anyone? Well, today we're diving deep into exactly that. Napoleon Hill's seminal work, The Law of Success. Now, this isn't just another self-help book you grab off the shelf. It's really a meticulously compiled philosophy of personal achievement, and it came directly from the insights of some of the most successful individuals in history. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack the core insights from Hill's, profound work. We want to show you not just what these principles are, but crucially, how you might apply them in your own life, how they can genuinely change the way you think and act, helping you cultivate what Hill himself called a success consciousness. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. And it's a philosophy that has, genuinely stood the test of time. It's influenced generations. We're talking leaders, entrepreneurs, motivational experts. Hill's work is often seen as the world's first really comprehensive philosophy of individual achievement. It's a foundational text.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how it all started.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't some dry academic study, right? It kicked off back in 1908. A young writer, Napoleon Hill, gets this meeting with the industrial titan, Andrew Carnegie. Now, Carnegie, known for being pretty shrewd, was apparently really impressed by Hill. So he just kind of casually tosses out this challenge. It sounds almost unbelievable today. Spend 2 decades, maybe more, analyzing the era's most successful men. Distill their philosophy. Find the common thread.
Yeah, and here's the real kicker, as you mentioned. Carnegie offered basically no compensation, just his cooperation, access to his network.
Wow.
And Hill accepted. As a young writer, that's an extraordinary leap of faith, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Just incredible commitment from the get-go.
It really is. And that commitment led to research on a scale that was, unprecedented at the time. Over the next 20 years or so, Hill meticulously analyzed hundreds of these well-known figures, giants, really. People like Henry Ford, William Wrigley Jr., John Wanamaker, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, Charles M. Schwab. The list goes on.
Titans of industry.
Exactly. And his singular goal, the mission Carnegie gave him, was to uncover what he called the money-making secret, the thing that had fueled their vast fortunes. He wasn't looking for, a magic trick, but a system. A pattern.
Okay, so after 2 decades, all that incredible access, all that relentless investigation.
Yeah.
What was it? What was this fundamental secret that Carnegie hinted at and Hill finally pinned down? Was it some complex business strategy or something else?
Well, what Hill ultimately distilled, and it sounds almost simple at first, is that all achievement, all earned riches, they really begin with an idea. But here's the critical part, the nuance, the amount of that achievement. It isn't limited by, say, the economy or circumstances nearly as much as it's limited by the person in whose mind that thought is put into motion.
So the limitation is internal.
Largely, yes. Hill famously said, faith removes limitations. Now, this isn't about just, wishing really hard. It's about recognizing that thoughts themselves, especially when you infuse them with purpose and persistence and particularly desire, they become incredibly powerful forces. It's a systematic way of thinking, cultivating specific thought patterns.
That distinction makes sense between just having a random idea and having a powerful idea, fueled by something more. And that leads us right into the first core principle you mentioned, the power of burning desire. Hill asserts pretty strongly that desire is the starting point of all achievement. But he's very clear, isn't he? This isn't just a casual wish, like, I hope I get rich.
Not at all. He described it as a pulsating desire which transcended everything else. It had to become an obsession almost. There's a remarkable anecdote he uses, the story of Edwin C. Barnes. It illustrates this perfectly. Picture this guy. He literally climbs off a freight train in West Orange, New Jersey. Looks like a tramp, apparently. But he has one single, all-consuming desire to work with Thomas Edison, not just for him.
So partnership, not employment.
Exactly. He didn't want just a job. He wanted to be Edison's business associate, his partner. And Hill observed that despite his appearance, Barnes's mind was, quote, that of a king. Now, it didn't happen overnight. It took 5 years of relentless effort, showing up, doing whatever job needed doing, making himself indispensable. But he eventually achieved that specific aim. He became Edison's business associate, made a fortune himself, actually. That wasn't just wanting something. That was a definite burning desire that translated directly into consistent action day after day.
That kind of persistence, born from such a clear, intense desire, It's genuinely inspiring.
Yeah.
But Hill wasn't just about these big, lofty concepts, was he? He was very practical. He actually laid out a surprisingly concrete 6-step method for what he called transmuting desire into its financial equivalent. It's almost like a recipe.
It really is like a blueprint, and it's surprisingly direct, very action-oriented. Okay, so first, fix the exact amount of money you desire. Be specific. No vague, I want to be rich. How much?
Cool, number.
Second, determine precisely what you intend to give in return for that money. Hill was big on this no something for nothing, value exchange.
Makes sense.
Third, establish a definite date by which you intend to possess it. A deadline makes it real, creates urgency. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and, crucially, begin at once, whether you feel ready or not, to put that plan into action.
Imperfect action beats perfect inaction. I like that.
Exactly. Fifth, write it all down, a clear, concise statement. The amount, the time limit, what you'll give in return, the plan, get it on paper. And sixth, this is key, read your written statement aloud twice daily. Once just before bed and once right after getting up. And as you read it, this is important, try to see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Visualize it. Embody it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for us today listening to this now. Many of those steps, the specificity, writing goals down, the repetition, the creative visualization, these are things widely validated by modern psychological studies, right? On goal setting, manifestation techniques, even cognitive behavioral therapy.
Absolutely. The science, decades later, actually supports the psychological soundness of these techniques. It really highlights that Hill was tapping into some fundamental principles of how the mind works long before they were formally labeled and studied in academia. He was ahead of his time.
Which brings us nicely to his second big principle. Faith and the subconscious mind. Hill explains that faith is the head chemist of the mind. That's a powerful metaphor. He believed that when faith gets blended with thought, your subconscious mind instantly picks up that vibration, that signal, and starts working to translate it into its physical equivalent.
So it's about cultivating a deep state of belief, isn't it? Not just hoping, but knowing it's possible or even inevitable.
It is, but that raises a really important practical question for anyone listening. How do you do that? How do you actually cultivate that kind of unshakable belief, especially if you don't feel it right now? Hill offers a specific technique, autosuggestion, or self-suggestion. This is the medium, the tool through which you consciously influence your subconscious mind.
How does that work? He uses this vivid analogy. He describes the subconscious mind as a fertile garden. And he says, look, if you don't deliberately sow the seeds of the crops, you want positive thoughts, goal-oriented ideas, then weeds will grow automatically. It implies you need to be actively, deliberately feeding your inner world. You can't just let random, negative, or fearful thoughts drift in and take root. You have to curate it.
So it's about intentional input, like programming a computer almost.
Yeah.
Knowing that your subconscious doesn't really judge the input, it doesn't differentiate between constructive or destructive impulses, it just acts on whatever material you feed it. Especially, as you said, thoughts mixed with strong emotion and faith.
Yeah.
It's the engine running on the fuel you provide.
Exactly. And the power of this, when applied, can be immense. A classic example, again involving Charles M. Schwab, who was Andrew Carnegie's right-hand man. He clearly mastered this. So picture this. It's 1900. Schwab gives this 90-minute speech, his audience. 80 of the nation's absolute financial elite, including the legendary and notoriously skeptical J.P. Morgan.
High-stakes presentation.
Extremely. Schwab outlines this clear, ambitious program for the massive expansion and consolidation of the steel industry, creating a giant trust. Now, Morgan was famous for distrusting other people's grand schemes. He'd shot down many before, but he was completely swept off his feet by Schwab's presentation. It wasn't just the idea, Hill emphasizes. It was the absolute faith and conviction Schwab projected. That idea, backed by that powerful faith, was effectively marketed, leading to the formation of U.S. Steel. The deal itself created a profit of around $600 million.
Which is staggering money back then. What would that be today?
Roughly $12 billion in today's terms. So this wasn't just talk. It wasn't just a good idea on paper. It was an idea supercharged by profound faith that created immense tangible value.
That's incredible. What's fascinating here is how much power Hill attributes to the mind itself, not just as a receiver of input, but as an active creator. So if desire is the starting point and faith is the fuel and the subconscious is the engine, what's the actual workshop? Where are these powerful ideas generated in the first place?
That leads us perfectly into Principle 3, imagination and specialized knowledge. Hill calls imagination the workshop of the mind. This is where desire takes its very first tangible steps toward becoming reality. And he makes an interesting distinction between two types of imagination. There's synthesized imagination, basically, taking existing concepts, ideas, or plans and arranging them into new combinations, thanks remixing. And then there's creative imagination. This is where supposedly entirely new ideas, hunches, inspirations seem to come from, maybe connecting with infinite intelligence, as he'll put it.
Okay, synthesized and creative.
Yes. And the key point he makes is that both types become more alert, more receptive, more powerful with consistent use. Imagination is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger and more responsive it gets.
We see this play out all the time, don't we? In so many real-world success stories, often from people you might not initially expect. Think about Bill Gates and Paul Allen, university dropouts, right? Similar story to Steve Jobs and Wozniak. But what they had was, 1, specialized knowledge programming skills, and 2, crucially, the imagination to foresee a future where average people, not just big companies or scientists, would use computers daily in their homes and their businesses.
They saw the hardware developing, but realized the software was the key.
Exactly. They didn't just wait for that future to happen. They actively created the software infrastructure like BASIC, then DOS, that would actually power those personal computers. They imagined the need and filled it.
Or consider Walter P. Chrysler, another great example. He started out as a railroad machinist, very specialized skill set. But he wasn't content just fixing trains. He bought one of the very early automobiles, a locomobile. And then, driven by this incredible imaginative curiosity, he took it apart, piece by piece, and put it back together again and again. He taught himself everything about how it worked. This wasn't just tinkering, it was acquiring highly specialized knowledge through intense personal effort, all driven by an imaginative pursuit of a bigger goal, which eventually led him to leave the railroads and found one of the biggest car companies in history.
And it's not always about these grand, world-changing inventions, is it? Hill really emphasizes how often huge fortunes are built on what seem like deceptively simple ideas. But combined with that imaginative application, like Harlan Sanders, Colonel Sanders of KFC fame.
Right. He was 62 years old. His motel business had just failed. He was left with basically his Social Security check and a unique fried chicken recipe. Most people might have given up. But his imagination kicked in. He didn't just think about selling chicken from a roadside stand. He imagined selling his method, his recipe and process through franchises, a totally different business model.
Brilliant. Or Ray Kroc with McDonald's. He was over 50, selling milkshake mixers. Not exactly glamorous. He visits this small, efficient fast food stand run by the McDonald brothers. And instead of just seeing a good local business, he immediately imagined a national chain. Thousands of them. He saw the system and imagined scaling it massively. Then he offered to do it himself.
Yeah, the vision was the key. And you also have Sylvan Goldman, a grocery store owner back in the 30s. He was frustrated because customers only bought what they could comfortably carry in a little handbasket. Sales were limited. So one day, he's staring at a folding chair in his office, and he looks at a handbasket. And he has this flash of insight. What if you put the basket on the chair frame and added wheels?
The shopping cart.
The shopping cart. It sounds so obvious now, but nobody had thought of it. That was imagination meeting a practical need.
Amazing. And David Gold with the 99 cents only stores.
Right. He noticed a simple psychological quirk. Goods priced at 99 cents often sold much better than the exact same goods priced at $1. He didn't just use it as a pricing tactic. He imagined applying that single fixed price concept to an entire store. Everything 99 cents. It was a fresh take on an older idea like Frank Woolworth's 5 and 10 cent stores, but updated and focused.
So what all these examples seem to share, it isn't necessarily inventing something completely out of the blue. It's often about recognizing an unmet need or maybe an overlooked opportunity, and then imaginatively combining existing elements, knowledge, technology, processes in a new, valuable way.
That's a great summary. Synthesis is often where the magic happens. But even the most brilliant ideas, fueled by desire and imagination, inevitably hit obstacles, right? Roadblocks, setbacks. And that brings us squarely to Principle 4, persistence and the mastermind. Hill has this fantastic line. He writes that persistence does for your character what carbon does to iron. It hardens it to steel.
Wow, that's strong.
It is. It's about the sheer will to carry on despite opposition, despite misfortune, despite what he calls temporary defeat. He was absolutely adamant that temporary defeat is never permanent failure. It's just a signal from the universe, if you like, that your plans might need adjustment, that something isn't quite right yet.
Don't quit, pivot.
Exactly. And again, like the other principles, he insists this isn't some mystical quality you're either born with or you're not. You can cultivate persistence. He lays out 4 very clear steps to develop it.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need a definite purpose, backed by that burning desire we talked about. That's the fuel. Second, you need a definite plan expressed in continuous, ongoing action. You can't just wish for persistence. Third, critically, you need a mind consciously closed off to negative and discouraging influences, especially from well-meaning friends or relatives who tell you it can't be done.
Tuning out the naysayers.
Precisely. And fourth, you need a friendly alliance. People who will encourage you to follow through with both your plan and your purpose. This is where he introduces the mastermind concept.
Right, the mastermind. That 4th point, the friendly alliance, that really resonates. I think for many people trying to achieve something big, that's often the missing piece, isn't it? Facing adversity alone is incredibly tough. So this raises a really important question. What exactly is this mastermind principle? And why did Hill believe it was so essential, saying no individual can achieve great power without using it?
That's a great question. Hill defines the mastermind very specifically. It's the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between 2 or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. So notice the key elements: coordination, harmony, definite purpose. It's not just hanging out with smart friends. It's a focused, synergistic alliance. The idea is that when 2 or more minds work together in harmony, they create a third, invisible, intangible force, a mastermind whose power is far greater than the sum of the individual minds involved.
Like 1 + 1 = 3, or maybe even 10, in terms of mental power.
Something like that. It provides not just encouragement, but also diverse perspectives, brainstorming power, accountability, and collective problem-solving capabilities that one person alone simply cannot access. Hill saw it as the very engine of collective achievement and power.
And Hill, quite remarkably, pointed to what he considered the ultimate example of a mastermind group in action, which was
the very birth of the United States of America.
Wow. That's a bold claim. How did he connect those dots?
Well, he traced the initial decision to pursue independence back to a small core group, particularly Samuel Adams and John Hancock in Massachusetts. Remember, they were facing extreme danger, very real threats of being charged with treason by the British Crown, which could mean execution. But instead of backing down, they called a secret meeting. Their burning desire for freedom, combined with extraordinary persistence against huge odds, led them to form the Committees of Correspondence. This network then evolved into the First Continental Congress.
So a small group with a shared purpose snowballed.
Exactly. And eventually, that led to the Second Continental Congress, which Hill identifies as the key mastermind group. This group of 56 men debated, collaborated, and finally, in harmony, made the monumental decision to sign the Declaration of Independence. They literally staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on that collective decision, that shared purpose. In Hill's view, this nation wasn't just born of revolution, it was born of a definite decision, forged within and executed by a powerful mastermind alliance. The scale of that commitment, born from collective agreement, is just staggering to think about.
It really is. An incredible historical example of that principle, maybe the ultimate example, how a shared, definite purpose, backed by persistence and that crucial spirit of harmony, can literally change the world, transforming an abstract idea of freedom into monumental reality, even against seemingly impossible odds. Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive into Napoleon Hill's law of success, it feels important to remember his overarching message. This isn't just a collection of interesting tips or theories you can cherry pick, is it? He saw it as a complete philosophy.
Absolutely. He emphasized that it's a carefully integrated whole. All the principles work together. It's designed fundamentally to change the way you think, to guide your thoughts and therefore your actions with a complete systematic set of principles working in concert.
Right. It's about cultivating that success consciousness you mentioned at the start.
Exactly. And Hill had some powerful parting thoughts on this. He famously said, "Poverty and riches can change places. But when riches take the place of poverty, the change only happens through well-conceived and carefully executed plans."
But poverty doesn't need a plan.
The same is not true of poverty, he wrote. Poverty needs no plan. Riches are shy and timid. They have to be attracted. And perhaps his most profound statement, the one that really encapsulates the core of his philosophy: more gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth.
Wow, that puts it all in perspective. So maybe the final thought for everyone listening, reflecting on this deep dive: what ideas are you currently cultivating in your mind? What thoughts are waiting there, ready to be infused with desire, faith, imagination, persistence, and maybe the power of a mastermind, waiting to be transmuted into your own definition of success?